Despite its troubled development, No Man's Sky released in 2016, almost 9 years ago. Since then, doubtless many would say it's improved, but others would still hold their ground saying otherwise. Where does the inspiration for No Man's Sky come from? The game's original prototype was worked on by Hello Games' Sean Murray, who wanted to create a game about the spirit of exploration inspired by the optimistic science fiction of Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, and Robert Heinlein, and the cover artwork of these works in the 70s and 80s. Murray wanted to recreate the feelings of space exploration seen in older procedurally generated games, such as Star Control 2, Elite, and Freelancer. Development expanded into a small four-person team prior to its first teaser in 2013. About a dozen developers worked on the game within 3 years leading to its release, with Sony providing promotional and marketing support. Sony formally announced the title during their press conference at the Electronic Entertainment Expo 2014, the first independently developed game to be presented there. The game's engine employs several deterministic algorithms such as parameterized mathematical equations that can mimic a wide range of geometry and structure found in nature. Art elements created by human artists are used and altered as well. The game's audio, including ambient sounds and its underlying soundtrack, also uses procedural generation methods from base samples. The game was actually quite buggy at launch. A number of software bugs affected both the PS4 and Windows versions. A game-breaking bug occurred with an in-game pre-order bonus spaceship players could collect that would potentially strand them on a planet, and a resource duplication exploit could significantly reduce the time needed to reach the endings. The Windows version garnered several reports of poor graphics rendering, frame rates, and the inability to even start the game. Within a day, Hello Games had identified several of the common issues and issued patches while working to provide better technical support and resolve other issues. Murray stated that their initial patches for both systems would be focused on customer support, before moving on to adding in new features. Upon release, there were a few 9 out of 10s, but mostly across the board I'm seeing 7s and 6s. While many praised the technical achievement of No Man's Sky's procedurally generated universe, several found that the nature of the game can become repetitive and monotonous, with the survival gameplay elements being lackluster and tedious. As summarized by Jake Swearingen in New York, you can procedurally generate 18.6 quintillion unique planets, but you can't procedurally generate 18.6 quintillion unique things to do. Some of the game's criticism stemmed from the limitations of what procedural generation can bring to a game. While the engine can provide a vast array of different planets, it is built atop a finite number of predetermined assets such as basic creature shapes or planetary biomes, and one-clickly exhausts these core assets even with variations allowed. An evaluation of the game's code showed that Hello Games had the foresight to enable new predetermined assets to be added into the game, which Gamasutra's Alyssa McAloon suggested that with more artists to provide more content, Hello Games or third parties could exponentially expand the perceived uniqueness of each planet. Kate Compton, who worked on the procedural generation elements of Spore, called this issue procedural oatmeal, in that while it is possible to pour a near infinite number of bowls of oatmeal, the result will still look like a bowl of oatmeal. Polygon's Ben Kuchera hypothesized that No Man's Sky could follow the same route as Destiny. So for the personal touch, so to speak, I recently played it for the very first time, sunk a couple hours into it, and to be honest, I do agree with a lot of what these reviewers are saying, that initially dipping your feet in, it is really cool. It's amazing to see everything going on, to be able to do all that stuff, to be able to throw on the overlay and scan things and, look for elements and, have to keep yourself alive with various different elements like carbon, oxygen, ferrous dust, stuff like that. It's really cool, man. But after a while, it does become repetitive, and I'm pretty sure that is the number one concern with this game, is that it does become repetitive. Now, is that a bad thing? No, because there's players that do play these sorts of games. I mean, there's players that play fucking Tetris, man. Like mobile shit like that, man. That is, I guess, the audience you want here, but nevertheless, it is the number one complaint, and for good reason, of course. Aside from that, I mean, it really does. It holds up. The graphics look great. It does want a lot of RAM though, so the moderate and the maximum requirements are 24 gigabytes of RAM. So you'll be Needing a couple more sticks of that. I'm gonna be honest though, one of the things that really struck me about this game was the music. The music was really cool. One of the things they do in this type of music is they love to use pads, so that definitely comes across here. I could give you a few examples. You know what, let's do that. So whenever I just look up No Man's Sky Reddit, one of the very first things that comes up is, how is this game nowadays? Thoughts on No Man's Sky? Is No Man's Sky good or fun? Well, let's click on that one. I've been seeing stuff that makes it look like fun, but I'm still unsure if I should play it again. Before I kind of aimlessly wandered from planet to planet, with no clear objective. Did they make changes that makes it fun now? What do I do to progress in the game? What is the appeal? What are some cool things you can do? My issue, is what somebody responded, is that I played it for 100 hours on release, came back to it many times, and I find planets too similar. Any cool planet I find another that is almost the same, very quickly. But it's not all negative. This user last played for any length of time in 2017 before the Atlas Rises update, and it feels like a lot has changed. Planets and systems are more varied. There is base building, ground vehicles. The main questline seems more substantial. It's still a fairly minimalistic story and sometimes feels mainly like an excuse to get you out there and seeing more of the universe, but it feels more directed than it did originally. I seem to be interacting with more actual characters than I did in the original base game. Of course, you still can choose to ignore that and do whatever you want. It's still more of a sandbox game. Standard space stations are nearly identical, and a lot of the gameplay loop involves gathering resources and crafting stuff, though you can tweak almost every aspect of how grindy it feels in the settings. If you almost liked it before, then the new content might be enough to make it genuinely fun. If you hated it, the new stuff might not change your mind. What really tipped the scales for them was playing it on PSVR 2 after the recent graphical update with Echoes. Really being inside the universe and feeling the enormous scale of everything is incredible, and turned an okay experience into an amazing one. And now it's one of the games I put the most time into this year. The common consensus seems to be that it's all just very shallow. No real progression as it all revolves around RNG and the precision, which is good but not complex. People can hop in for 10 or 20 minutes and have a good time. But Elite Dangerous seems to be the recommendation here. What about the VR? What do people say about that? Is it genuinely worth it? Is it integrated so well that it comes across as well as made for a VR game? Or does it require a level of dealing with it? Serious Sam VR ports is their baseline for what a flat to VR should be. It genuinely plays awesomely as if it was meant to be VR. The consensus is that it's pretty great. Absolutely incredible, it runs just fine, just expect to turn the settings down a bit. Obviously you can't run normal visuals in VR for the game. But there are some caveats. Incredible in almost all regards as a VR title except Flight. This user hates Flight so much they just don't play VR, but they did make some upgrades to it late last year. Well, 3 years ago. I would play No Man's Sky exclusively in VR if they let me control the ship using the thumbsticks instead of a virtual stick. The virtual stick is always a problem for me. It always drifts and maybe I'm just fat or large or have an inhuman shape. But the stick is always somehow reaching a weird place in my stomach or something that I can't reach. People are apparently buying VSVR 2 specifically just to play No Man's Sky. 100% one of the games they consistently come back to mess around in. It constantly gets VR updates to make performance better. It can get a graphical mess at times. But you shouldn't expect a game with infinite moon-sized planets to run smoothly on anything. Now, for my friend group and I, it was largely pretty good. We got into the game. There were large periods of silence where you'd even wonder if anybody was there at all. But no, we were all just engrossed with the game. Namely with a few exceptions. Those being, well, why can't blank? Or why is this here? Or what is the point of that? Like, just... But honestly, you could kind of say they're just general complaints. But, you might have that with any game. And it is inevitable, I suppose. But, nonetheless, we still had that. It wasn't 100% smooth sailing, but when is it going to be? So let's see, here we go. This one is from 9 years ago. What happened during development that led to the game we have now? Why did it fail? The failure that is No Man's Sky makes me more disappointed than angry. The show of a great game is there, greatness was within reach, but still fell devastatingly short. Whatever hope for the game's future is finished. I don't see them wasting time to finish a game that has so few players. I think they simply aren't as good as people thought they were at making games bigger than simple side-scrolling mobile games. They should have created No Man's Sky as tech and just licensed the engine out to those who are. This user can make a good guess at what happened. It's very easy for a development group of any type of software to overpromise, for a project to simply grow out of control. Yeah, scope creep. Wouldn't it be neat if ... leading to an impossible to finish plan. It takes a team lead with iron control to go, no, let's get the core concepts done first, and add stuff later if we have time or the ability. What happens with that kind of feature creep is that you tend to get trapped. The first stages of any program of any coding project are a breeze, moreover than not. There is an old programmer's adage. The first 90% of a project takes 10%, the last 10% takes 90% of the time. And I'm sure that's exactly what happened here. Hello Games overpromised, and then 4 months from ship date they hit a wall. They had most of the game finished, but the more they tried to get the last bits implemented, the last bugs squashed, the last polishing and optimizing, the more problems cropped up. And naturally I feel like with developing a game, sure you can have some playtesters, but if you're small like that, you're not really going to be able to have that many playtesters, so really, when you release the game, especially if it's in early access, your audience will become your playtest, because you don't, like I said, you don't have that many people in the first place, so... And it definitely does help out, but if you come to a game that early, you really should expect to be finding bugs, reporting them, that sort of shit, helping the game, like the team get their shit together, so to speak, you know what I mean? So let's see here. At some point it had to become apparent that with forward progress to a finished game slow to a crawl, that they would never reach their ship date. They delayed as much as they could, but that went over spectacularly badly. Plus they would have had Sony breathing down their necks, so what do you do at that point? Announce another delay and maybe have their fans riot and suddenly break off the partnership? Or start chopping bits out of the game until what's left works? And they chose option B. Features were simplified until they could be forced to work. Others were dropped completely. QA was cut down to a bare minimum. And thus, this is the game we then had. Here's an interesting point. I think it was probably at this point when they reasoned that the game's apparently vast scope and the unpredictability of procedural generation meant they might be able to get away with pretending the game hadn't been cut back to a stump for a little longer after release than most other games could get away with. It took days for people to realize how much was missing, and in that time, they made millions. They'd probably also made some wild promises to investors who were already in thin ice after the delays and didn't want to have to go crawling back. Maybe they just aren't very good at designing a game. Some of the technical stuff in No Man's Sky is pretty impressive. The horizon-spanning smooth voxel terrain engine, the speed of the surface-space transitions, and it can look amazing at the right moment. It sure can. But there are just so many basic design problems here that obviously don't stem from a lack of resources. The inventory, the user interface, the absence of a photo mode or any way to remove objective markers, the reliance on what appears to be a glitch to move at any kind of reasonable speed. The game really isn't that bad, but it definitely does need to have that dedicated fan base, you know, the cult following to show it the love that it deserves, because again, it is from a small team. Having it in the first place is amazing because of the development, okay? You just need to look at these things, appreciate them, yada yada yada, right? I will admit that I was at first quite confused with what was going on. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing what the quest is asking of you, but if you are any familiar with story-driven games, that sort of thing, having to follow a task, it's not exactly a free play game. I mean, I guess you can do that, but you can also follow the story, as lackluster as it may be, as you might think it is. It does give you things to do, and honestly, in that point it does seem almost endless. I'm sure it's only a few hours in length, but for the little bit I was playing it, it did seem quite extensive. Now, that might be from a surface level point of view, that might be, oh, this guy has literally no idea what the fuck he's talking about, but for me, a newcomer, which is the perspective you're gonna get here, well, it looks pretty good, pretty promising. But this is 9 years later. Should you expect a game to take
9 years
of your life? No, but some people are so dedicated, so starstruck by these games, these franchises, that they're like, you know what, I'm with you all the way, I'm on board, you know, I'll fucking literally martyr myself for you if I have to, like, that's that sort of shit, right? So did it have a troubled launch? Yes it did, because of all the things that it promised, which is the consensus here. Is it slowly on the up and up, the you know, the rebound? I would say so, yeah. Did it take a hell of a long time doing so? Yes. okay? Not everybody lives 10 years, okay? Not everybody wants to continue gaming after 10 years. You know what I mean? A lot happens in that time. A lot happens in 1 year, let alone 9, you know? Like, it's such a substantial amount of time for a game. Enough time to even really consider a sequel if a sequel is what they're looking for, you know what I mean? Or it just could be like Minecraft, where they just continually update the game even if Microsoft, whoever the fuck, updates it once a year and adds like 3 mobs, okay? And like splits the community with their mob votes and everything. It's so stupid. I don't even want to talk about that. This isn't even about Minecraft. So we're not going to talk about it. But you see what I mean, right? All these things culminate in an amazing game. All these things culminate in a game that everybody has to wait on, which isn't great. They move on. They forget about it. They think about other games. And that's not what you want. But for the lucky few that stayed, that continued playing the game, I'm sure they had a blast. And maybe are continuing to have one.